Happy day. The topic for discussion today is realism in international relations. So let us start the class by asking a very simple question. As a human being, when something bad happens to you or if you get into a confrontation, what is the immediate thought that comes into you? Do you think morally? Do you want to act very ethically, or immediately do you act on your intuitions to fight back? So that is what realism actually talks about, the innate nature of a human being. And this is the comparison that a lot of realistic thinkers put into realism as to countries or nations also behave in the same way that human beings tend to react. So when we talk about what realism is, it mainly focuses on the thought that the nations are constantly in a conflicting nature. That is the way the world intends itself to be. Why do they constantly be in conflict? Because the nations tend to constantly be in a power struggle for the purpose of achieving their national interests, which will directly impact their national power in the global arena. Second of all, the assumption that we have about realism is that the world politics or the world in general is constantly in an anarchic situation. What do we understand by anarchic? Is that when there is no single organization or a hegemon put in place to set rules or regulations for how the countries have to behave. When the state or the world is in an anarchic situation, it tends to have interest of survival, and this is only achievable through realism. When we talk about the core assumptions of realism, the first is international system is anarchic. So this is the most important assumption that realism focuses on, that conflicts are inevitable, that when there are multiple forces in place, multiple nations are acting to achieve their national power, it is very common for the system to become a chaos, and this has to be managed only through putting in some kind of force in place. Next is states act as the primary actors. So when we talk about how states act as primary actors, here all the other actors, today we have non-government actors, we have other institutions put into place, but realism only focuses on giving importance to state as actors and how they behave. Third, power is the main currency. All the countries, irrespective of all the other national powers that they achieve, power is the one currency that they are vehemently trying to achieve consistently. That if they are not to get power, it is going to create a kind of imbalance or disrupt the equilibrium in the world arena. And fourth, conflict is inevitable. When there are multiple actors put into place, conflict is inevitable because there's a constant struggle for achieving this power, and this directly impacts the conflict or the problems that exist in the world. Next, we move on to types of realism. So when we have to talk about realism and its types, there are different assumptions or different thinkers who have contributed to the way we perceive realism. So first, we have the classical realism. So classical realism as a theory emerged in 1945 with the end of World War II, and this was a situation where the world really needed some kind of direction as to how it has to move forward. So Hans Morgenthau contributed to classical realism that basically focuses on the fact that human nature and the way nations behave are one and the same. Just like how human beings struggle for power and how human beings try to accumulate power, that is exactly the way nations also behave, and in order to achieve this power, the nations will go to any extreme. Classical realism also goes to the extent of explaining that when power is in demand, when power is the quotient that is in question, nations will go to any extreme to achieve this, and to a great extent, power or realism is the means to achieving the end. So when we talk about means to achieving the end, peace is what all the countries try to achieve, and violence is the means to achieving this end. When we talk about wars happening, conflicts happening, constantly we question, why do countries go into war? Why do they constantly fight? can't they be peaceful? Realism focuses on the fact that if you have to achieve peace, it is through violence, and violence is one of the means to achieving that end. And that is what classical realism talks about. Next, we have structural realism that was given by Kenneth Walls. So, he brings in the concept of institutions within the world politics. And he says that these institutions, these multiple institutions that exist in the world and how they behave, contribute to achieving power. And why this happened, why Kenneth Walls wanted to give an institutional structure to realism is because when Hans Morgenthau spoke about how countries behave, there was no quantifiable factor involved. How do you measure this power? On what grounds do you measure how this power is to be understood? So, Kenneth Walls spoke about giving it a structure so that we can quantify the power that the countries possess. Next, we have offensive realism. When we talk about offensive realism, it talks about how states try to seek hegemony, and defense realism talks about how states try to seek dominance and not just peace. Next, we have key thinkers of realism, and first we have Thucydides, who spoke about realism or contributed to the idea of realism during the Peloponnesian War. So, he said that the powerful has the right to do whatever they want and the weak has to succumb to it. This is what was the contribution of Thucydides, where he tried to say that countries are going to fight, nations are constantly going to fight and annex more territories for the sake of power, and the weaker states do not have a say in any of these things. Next, we have Machiavelli, and Machiavelli spoke about the state of nature and how it impacts war, that countries are to behave in a conflicting manner, and that is how the state or the nature of the state intends itself to be. It is constantly going through a flux because it merely needs to survive itself. And next, most importantly, we have Hans Morgenthau, who talks about how the states behave in a particular way, and this is the one of the possibility to achieve the ends, which today we assume in an ideal is the ideal state or to achieve world peace. So, Hans Morgenthau spoke that in order for countries to be in a powerful state which will directly impact equilibrium, then the countries are to be in conflict and they are going to be in a flux which will directly impact them achieving world peace or maintain the equilibrium in the world. After which we have Kenneth Walls, who gave a structure to this, and he added the concept of quantifying this power. How is power to be measured? And finally, we have John, who spoke about power maximization as the ultimate goal. When we talk about achieving power, oftentimes we say how much power is required. So then we have John, who came and spoke about the fact that there is no consistent measurement with power, because as and when power is accumulated, the countries are going to seek more and more power, and that is the way in which they try to maintain equilibrium. When one country becomes powerful, automatically the other country drops in power. However, this maintains the equilibrium in the world. Next, we have some of the theories that are contradictory or conflict with realism. So, first we have realism versus liberalism. Liberalism focuses on the concept of freedom, where realism talks about state of nature, and it says that countries are to behave in a conflicting manner and power is the only factor that matters in world politics. Next, we have realism versus constructivism, where constructivism talks about creation of new ideas, norms and morality, whereas realism talks about an amoral state where power is ultimate and you can do anything to achieve that power. And finally, we have realism versus Marxism, where Marxism talks about power struggle and how there should be a set rules in how these power struggles are maintained, which is conflicting to realism. Next, we move on to the criticisms of realism. Although the state of nature is something that we cannot deny, or the innate nature of a state which cannot be undone, however, there are certain criticisms that we have to dwell on before understanding the theory as a whole. So, first it talks about conflict and disagreements over peace or cooperation. As a theory, when it focuses too much on conflict and it justifies conflict over cooperation, there needs to be other theories that have to come along and justify it as a whole. Next, we have the point where it talks about the complete ignorance of institutions or international institutions. It says that none of this matters, only the quest for power matters. So, the complete ignorance of international relations or the role they play in international relations actually impacts the entire system to a great extent. Third, we move on to the fact that it does not emphasize on the peaceful change of the world. And fourth, underestimates the role of non-state actors. And today we very well know that how much non-state actors influence how world politics works and how much they have a say in decision making of world politics. So, however, as a theory in realism, all of these are completely ignored and it only focuses on the fact that power is the ultimate goal, and in order to achieve that power, states can do anything, and that is the only means or that is the only way in which the countries can survive in this world arena. Finally, to conclude, I would like to emphasize on the fact that the relevance of realism, but however, although realism is one of the core theories of international relations and it emphasizes the basic understanding or the basic assumptions of how we have to understand world politics, it is also important for us to understand it with the combination of other theories. As a standalone theory, if we are to talk about realism and if we are to employ realism as a theory, it would justify violence and it would justify war. So, we need to study it as a combination of other theories which would enable us understanding why there is war and why violence happens. That is the question that we have to answer, not justify war or justify violence. Is war and violence inevitable? Yes. But why does it happen? When we question or we try to answer this question, then it automatically enables us to stop it or decrease the amount of wars or violence that happens in the world. Next, states continue to work towards their self-interest. Yes, every country has national interest and achieving this national interest is the primary goal of every country. No country is going to focus on the national interest of another country. Having said that, it is also very important to keep in mind at what cost we are trying to achieve this national interest and how much of realism or the state's nature are we trying to understand in why certain states behave in a particular way. Third, power politics shapes the international relations. Yes, the world has to always be in an equilibrium, otherwise it will lead to wars or it will lead to a power fluctuation, because of which it is very important for states to constantly focus on achieving power. When countries try to achieve more and more power, automatically there is going to be a fluctuation that happens. There is going to be a decrease in power with certain countries, there is going to be increase in power with certain countries. But however, one thing that we have to remember is that when this power fluctuation happens, the world automatically sets itself into equilibrium. It is an automatic function that happens where when one country raises in power, another country decreases, but it maintains its equilibrium at all points. And fourth, it has to be used with other theories as a combination, and that is the only way in which realism as a theory can be employed in international relations. Thank you.